There's a certain strategy in real estate to buy properties with very little money out of pocket and not using your own credit. And it is probably my favorite way to buy properties. It's called subject to. And it's the weirdest term in real estate. It basically just means you're taking over a property and there's an underlying mortgage that's attached to that, and you're taking over subject to the restrictions and everything that has to do with that mortgage. So that's what we're talking about today, is subject to properties. And the reason it's my favorite way to buy properties is because you can buy a property and you don't have to worry about qualifying for a loan. You don't have to worry about jumping through all the hoops that the lender requires of you, and your down payment is whatever you can negotiate with the seller. So let's say, usually this works best in a scenario where you have a motivated seller and they need to leave because of X, Y, or Z reason, and they need to sell the house quickly, or they need some quick cash. And so you can come in and you can present yourself as a solution to their problem. A lot of times these people are people that are in pre-foreclosure, they have late taxes, some kind of motivated reason to get out of the house fast, and you can step in and solve that for them. So let's take the example, if somebody is late on their mortgage and they're afraid that they're 3 months late and the bank's gonna foreclose on them, you can step in and say, hey, listen, I will take over your property, you're gonna sign a deed over to me. And it's as simple as that. They're going to sign the deed over to you, and I'm going to give you some moving money. Here's $3,000, and that's it. And you may think, wait a minute, there's a mortgage that's attached to this property. They owe quite a bit on this property. How can you just deed the property over without paying off that deed? And every note and mortgage since 1988 has what's called a due on sale clause in it. And this is why people think that it's illegal. And what that clause says in summation is that if this property transfers to a new owner, the bank has the right to call the note due. It's not illegal. There's nothing illegal about it. It's just like any contract, like your HOA. If you don't abide by the rules of that contract you have with the HOA by putting away your trash can and things like that, they can fine you or take other actions. So that's the same here. If you are in breach of that contract, they have remedies that they can come in and take the property and secure their asset and make sure that their investment is secure. So that's their recourse. But in reality, most banks don't really want these properties back as long as they're getting paid. That's 90% of the battle. So with that being said, if you're going to be taking over a property from somebody and you're going to keep their existing mortgage in place, that can cause some problems down the road. What happens if for some reason you can't work out with the bank or you can't reinstate the loan? So here's how it's gone in the past when I've done this. I said, hey, here's $3,000 for moving expenses, and they deed me the property. I go and I get it recorded. The whole thing costs $14 in recording fees, and that's it. That's as simple as it gets. But there's a lot of things you need to do to protect yourself and to protect the person that you're buying the property from. The first thing is you want to disclose. You want to cover yourself in the event that something potentially went wrong. Say something disastrous happened in your life and you had to give this property back for whatever reason. Ultimately, there would be so many different avenues that you could solve this situation without getting into a scenario where you're in default. But in the event that something happens, you have them sign a piece of paper saying that basically, I, as the seller, understand that there's an underlying note and mortgage on this property, and by transferring this title to Jason, I understand that the bank can call it due, and I will at that point have to pay this off in full. So it's just a disclosure. But remember, these are motivated people. These are people that are ready to walk away from their house anyway, and oftentimes their credit is already in shambles. So by me coming in, buying the property from them, paying back their back payments, and reinstating those payments monthly is going to help their credit. So oftentimes they're excited about doing this, and the worst case scenario is they're going to be right back in the same position they are right now. Most of the time, my disclosures say something along the lines of, I'm going to do my best to get you out of this situation. Of course, in legalese, this is how it sounds. I'm going to do my best to get you out of this situation, but in the event it doesn't work, you're basically going to be right back in the same position you are, or I'll deed the property back to you. But again, it's never going to come to that because there's so many different things that I can do. I can get creative about this 9 different ways. So that's the first thing. I want to get that disclosure, and that's probably the number one thing. Is I don't want in 5 years someone coming back to me and saying, hey, you promised that you would save me from foreclosure. No, I have it in writing right here. You agreed that if this doesn't work out, I'm just going to deed the property back to you, and you're holding me harmless. If you ask your real estate agent about this, they're not going to know what you're talking about. I'd say 95% of realtors have no idea about this type of real estate. And they deal with selling houses and working with a title company, and that's it. That's the box that they fit in. When they're in real estate school, everybody learns about this concept. But this is one of those things that when you're in the class, you say, oh, that class, the real estate courses were so dumb. I'm not going to use 90% of that stuff that I learned. And that's true, because you don't know how to utilize it. If you know what you're doing, the 90% of the stuff that you never use, I use that stuff every day, and that's where the money is. That's that area that most people don't understand. And if you just take a little bit of time to understand these concepts, there's awesome potential out there. So most real estate agents don't know how to do this. So that's why working with properties that are on the MLS is very tricky, because you're going to have a hard time explaining this to an agent in a way that they're going to want to get on board, and plus they have to get their commission paid, so you got to come out of pocket, and it just makes the deal harder working with real estate agents. So these are best with motivated sellers that you find outside of the MLS. And I did this video here that talks about all the different ways that you can find these motivated sellers. I'm not going to go in that right now, but just keep in mind, those are the type of deals that we're looking for. Another thing that I'm going to get them to sign before we close on this deal is an irrevocable power of attorney regarding real estate. And this isn't a general power of attorney that allows me to go open up bank accounts in their name. This is just in regards to this specific property. So if I need to, in the event I need to go in and make some changes, I have the power of attorney. If I missed anything, I can come back and do that later. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get a authorization to release information form. Now, this can be a little tricky, but I have a generic one that I have printed out that works with most banks, and it basically says, hey bank, this is Jason Moss. He's helping me with my payments and helping me get back on my feet. Talk to him and you can discuss anything about the loan with him, and I give you my permission. That's what this form is. It's just not, and different banks have their own forms, but some don't. So I have this general form that I use, and that's it. Another thing I might get from them is their online mortgage account information where they pay their mortgage. So I can go on and I can make sure that the payment has been made and it's been applied correctly, and that if there's any delinquencies or changes in the escrow amounts, that I can intercept that. You can change the address, you can change the phone number. So if the bank has any issues, they call you directly, or if they miss a payment, they're going to mail you the letter. You didn't make a payment last month. What's the problem? And you'd be like, oh no, I didn't make that. And you can intercept that rather than it being mailed off to some previous seller that has nothing to do with the property. So when I do these deals, I can tell the seller that, you know what, you can mentally move on from this property. I'm going to do my best, but you can consider this a done deal. There's something called the Garmin-St. Germain Act, and what that said is people are allowed to take property from their own name and put it into a trust, and that won't trigger that due on sale clause that we talked about earlier. And the bank can't say we want to call the loan due because of that. So the seller, you're going to take this property and your last name is Smith. We're going to create the Smith Land Trust, and then we're going to take that land trust and we're going to record it. And now that the property is in the Smith Land Trust, and as far as the bank's concerned and everybody's concerned, that's where it ends. But there's another document that we have them sign, and it's called the Transfer of Beneficial Interest in the Trust. And basically what they're doing is they're taking that interest that they have in this trust, transfers it from Mr. Smith to me. And they're the beneficiaries. They're not the trustee. The trustee is usually somebody that they trust, like a lawyer or a parent or a friend. And they're the ones that show up on title. Say their attorney's name is Steve. So Steve is going to show up as the trustee on the paperwork. So if somebody looks up this property and they type it in the account, it'll say, Steve, the trustee of the Smith Trust. But the beneficiary of the trust is Mr. Smith, and they direct the trust, but they are the beneficiaries. Now, the transfer of beneficial interest in the trust transfers it from Mr. Smith to me. Now, I am the beneficial interest, but that transfer was not recorded. So as far as the bank's concerned, as far as the world's concerned, as far as any attorneys that are trying to sue me are concerned, Mr. Smith still owns this house. But in reality, I have that transfer of beneficial interest signed by the seller and giving me power direct trust. Now, there's other avenues now. There's living trusts that work sometimes better depending on which state you're in. This can work better or worse, and not all states do this. So there's different ways that you can do this. But in the end, 9 times out of 10, I'd say 99 times out of 100, the bank doesn't care. As long as they're getting their payments, that's really what matters. If you really want to get into that area of anonymity, then that's another video that we'll have to go into. The other thing you're going to want to consider is insurance. The insurance on the property now that is in your name, if the property burnt down for whatever reason, they're going to pay it out to Mr. Smith and not to you. So you want to be added on there as additionally insured, and that's only going to come into play if there's a major fire or some kind of event like that. So the way that this breaks down on a step-by-step process is, number one, I'm going to get that authorization to release information from the bank. I'm going to fax that to the bank, and I'm going to make sure that the bank gets it and is recorded. I'm going to take down all the information, the interest rate, how many years are on the mortgage, what the mortgage payment is, all the information on the loan, and I'm going to write that down. I'm going to make sure that I'm on there so I can talk to the bank in the future. Once I have that information, we'll fill out an offer with the seller and we'll close on the property. They're going to sign a warranty deed to me, and then, or if you're using a trust, you're going to transfer that into the trust, and then if you're doing it into a trust, you're going to transfer the beneficial interest in the trust to you, and then you're going to keep that as an unrecorded document. And you want to talk to the bank, and you want to ask the bank, what is it going to take to bring this property current? Obviously they haven't been making their payments. I need an amount, and that's the amount you're going to pay the bank to get this property. Maybe it's $2,000, maybe it's $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever the amount is. You're going to get that, and as soon as you wire that money to the bank, this loan will be reinstated, and that person will be on with their life. The other thing I like to do with these type of properties is I want to talk to the title company, do a quick title search, make sure there are no other liens attached to this property that could affect my interest, because I'm taking this property on a certain date and I want to know what I'm buying. I don't want to buy it if there's an IRS lien attached to it like that. I still may buy it, but that's a whole other strategy. If there's anything else attached to it that you didn't know about, you can put the brakes on. But if the title company says that it's free and clear other than this first mortgage, then you can move forward. And the benefit of having it in a trust or in some kind of entity is that in the future, if that person, Mr. Smith, moves on with his life and then has an IRS tax lien or any other type of lien or judgment or anything, it can't attach to the property because it's no longer in his name personally. It's in a trust or it's in a LLC. I've had several people just give me their houses for free. And the scenario goes like this. They'll be like, hey, I'm behind on my mortgage payment. It's going to foreclosure next month. I don't really have any way to get this out of foreclosure, so I'm going to lose everything. You know, if you can maybe possibly save my credit, here's the house. And that's it. They signed the document, 10 minutes, I own a house as soon as I go record it in the morning. During the last boom and bust, I got annihilated. I had amassed $1 million and I thought I was just doing awesome, and I was trying to play it really smart. Anyway, I ended up losing all that money and I was $250,000 in the hole trying to dig myself out, and I had no credit, I had no money, and the only way that I had to do real estate deals was doing this type of subject to type deals. And you know what? Honestly, they're the best type of deals. They're a little bit harder to find, but they're so easy, they're so low risk, and it's some of the cheapest ways to buy real estate. Back when this was happening, I had maybe $7,000 and I did my first deal. That's how little you need to do these type of deals. Okay, now there's a few things that you definitely don't want to do when doing a subject to deal. You do not want to call the bank and tell them you are taking over this loan. That may trigger that due on sale clause. Out of all the deals that I've done and talking with title companies that do thousands of these type of deals, the ones that get called due are usually home equity lines of credit where they can continually come back and draw more money on the loan. Now it's transferred to somebody else. They will probably call the home equity line of credits due. Other ones that are tricky to do if you're working with title companies can be FHA. Other than that, you can do FHA outside of escrow and conventional as well. Another don't. You don't want to make promises that you can't keep. Again, that's why we have that clause in there stating what we will and what we won't do, and what our promises are and what they're not. Don't lie to the homeowner. Don't lie to the bank. The next thing is don't cancel the insurance. You want to keep the insurance in place and just add yourself as an additionally insured. Don't miss your payments. Do what you said you were going to do. If you get into trouble, I'm sure there's an investor out there that can come in and take over your place and would love to step into this subject to deal. Another don't go into this without an exit plan. Make sure you know how you're going to exit this property, if it's selling on seller finance or whatever. Another thing you may want to think about doing is, if you can qualify for a loan, worst case scenario is the bank comes in and says, hey, we're calling this loan due. We saw that it transferred. At that point, you can go and get a mortgage and just refinance them out. But I've done that in situations where I didn't have that ability, but I knew that I could sell it on the market very quickly because the market was hot. And the last thing is don't sue me, bro. I'm just giving out free information. Don't take legal advice from some rando on YouTube. Don't go in and mess this up and do the things that I told you not to do and then think there's anyone to blame other than yourself. And of course, there's all my disclosures. I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney. Like I say, it's better to have a consultant when you're doing your first subject to deal, so you make sure you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. Hopefully this was helpful. This is a huge topic, and I'm probably going to have to add on to this video and do some more explainer videos into diving into each one of these little topics. But this is probably one of the most common questions that I get. There's so many follow-up questions like, oh, how do you do that? How do you do this? How do you do that? I just had somebody ask me today, how do I do these subject twos? And so I wanted to put out this video so I could give this to people as a base, and then we can start the conversation from there, and at least they'll have something to go off. So hopefully this is helpful. Give me a like and subscribe if you learned anything here today. Share this with a buddy, anybody who's interested in real estate. And they may not know about this. Most people don't even know that this even is out there. So if they can put this in their Rolodex as a wholesaler or something like that, they could really increase their closings when they're going and sitting in front of a seller if they can't just pay all cash. This is another way, another tool, or another arrow in their quiver. So hopefully you like this video, and good luck on your real estate investing, and we'll see you on the next video.